Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, he was running late. Gabriel should have either cut his shower or drink, but he was no one to deviate from a routine. He charged with the crowd, the low gravity and increased oxygen content granting him near superhuman levels of stamina and agility. Gabriel liked to think that the regular exercise he partook in was also helping. The streets were wide and gave plenty of room to manoeuvre, though his way was blocked by pedestrians every once in a while. Gabriel was no one for theatrics and did not like drawing attention to himself, but his concern over being late overrode his shyness. Fortunately, most people here were large and he could duck and weave with their legs. Most were startled and bemused by his actions, but no one was frightened. Gabriel chalked it up to his small size and supposed that many assumed he was an energetic child going for a run. Someone might find it odd that one of the most notable species in the galaxy could travel through a vast city without anyone realizing what he was, but when you considered the hassle someone had to go through just to shake hands with a paradise walder, it made sense that most humans simply did not bother. They stayed in their own systems, with only the odd tourist or diplomat seeing the wider galaxy. Gabriel's extended stay on Minigarad had forced him to wear his suit. Shorter trips could be done through a comprehensive decontamination process that killed all microorganisms in the human's body, but this could cause autoimmune problems if maintained for over a month. Not to mention it also killed the symbiotic bacteria that lived in the human gut, and a year with a mix of constipation and diarrhea was not something Gabriel ever wanted to do. So even if he had only been here for a week, Gabriel would have still picked the suit. He skidded to a halt in front of the administration building his orientation was taking place in. The lower gravity meant he overshot it by a few meters, and had to double back. The building was much the same as the others, with lots of glass shaped into elegant and visually pleasing forms. The automatic door was open and Gabriel trotted to the front desk, thanking that there was no line. "Sorry to bother you, I have come for the orientation," he said, calling out to the sapiens sitting at the front desk. "Ah, yes," they said, standing up and looking at Gabriel. "You are running a little late, but that is nothing new. Just go through those doors and take the first door on the left." Gabriel thanked them and followed their directions until he stood at the door. The sign above said "Orientation in progress. Please do not enter." He stilled himself. Gabriel could already picture dozens of eyes staring at him once he opened the door. His heart rate increased as the anxiety set in, and for a brief moment he considered just walking away, pretending that he never found the room. Gabriel did not, though. He approached the door, and it opened for him. No one was looking at him. In fact, no one could see him. Gabriel had expected a few folding chairs in front of a projector screen. What he got instead was more akin to a cinema. He could hear people talking inside their individualized booths. Though now that Gabriel thought about it, this arrangement made much more sense. Each species had different seating requirements, so having a room specialized for the job was a good idea. "I take it you are Mr. Rattlew," a voice called out behind him. Gabriel was startled and quickly spun on his heels. "I apologize, I did not mean to frighten you," the alien added. The Xenos was roughly 2.5 meters tall, covered in a marvelous plumage of feathers. They were bipedal, but held themselves horizontally like a theropod dinosaur. They had wings, but they were far too small to allow flight or even gliding. Gabriel supposed they were a display structure. As his eyes were drawn to the sapien's face, he was struck with a case of the uncanny valley. Despite the large covering of feathers, except on their comically oversized lips, it was eerily human. There were even whites in his eyes. However, all this might have been tolerable if it were not smiling at him. It was all kind of wrong, and Gabriel was hit by the instinct to just run, to get the hell away from this thing as fast as possible. However, he did not. His common decency prevailed, and he replied in an admittedly croaky voice, Yes, I am." "Excellent. There is no need to apologize for running late. The city can be a bit of a maze, and no doubt the decontamination process in your room took longer than you expected," the alien explained, still maintaining that horrid grin. "I'm sure you would look just as creepy to it as it does to you," he told himself, while simultaneously taking the alien excuse. Yes, it did take longer than I expected." Gabriel was somewhat disturbed that it knew it was staying in a Death Order apartment, that it knew where he was staying. "How did you know that?" Gabriel asked, trying and failing to mask the accusation in his voice. The dinosaur man thing either did not understand Gabriel's tone, or deliberately chose to ignore it. "I required your species to provide the correct seating requirements. As for how I knew you went through decontamination, you are a Death Order, it is a legal requirement." Yes, that made sense, they worked here. It's not surprising it knew about him, Gabriel told himself, trying to get his nervousness under control. "If you will follow me, I will escort you to your seat and we can begin," the sapien stated, pointing one of their wings and gesturing Gabriel to follow. From the back, the alien was thankfully far less disturbing. He tried his best to ignore what sat on his shoulders. Gabriel was led to a small but highly private booth facing a large screen. Like an extremely high-class private cinema, he thought, as the person gestured for him to sit. Gabriel kept his face pointed at the person while averting his gaze, his suit hiding that he was looking away. "Now that everyone is here, we can begin," the sapient said, and left Gabriel to it. He let out a sigh of relief. He knew on an intellectual level that the person was no threat and that he was being racist to act this way, yet he could not help it. There was just something wrong about them that triggered some primal part of his brain. Gabriel comforted himself by saying that he would get over it in a week or so after regular interaction with them. This is a you problem, but you will get over it. The room darkened and the screen lit up. Mercifully, the alien remained out of view, though they still spoke. Their orientation was pretty standard, really. A brief overview of the rules, where you could go, what tours, rides, other cities you could visit. Gabriel paid attention, mainly because the slideshow was exceptionally well made, with numerous videos that surprisingly avoided the cringe factor that usually accompanied these things. It also provided many safety warnings, that while Minigrad was a civilized world, it was also a nature reserve, and almost all of the animals were wild. Much of the planet was untouched by society, so always follow the safety guideline when travelling on a guided tour. It was also essential to keep your survival kit on hand when leaving the city limits. This was to be provided at the end of the orientation. Several survival experts designed it. A list of these professionals was displayed on screen. Gabriel did not know most of them, but one name stood out: Madeline Barn. Gabriel had heard of her. She had been some working schlub like him, who had saved over 200 lives and fought with a band of pirates while stranded on a death world, without getting a single scratch. Ms. Barn was still alive, if he recalled correctly, still living on the world that bore her name, though it was now a human colony. Gabriel would have probably continued wondering about her. While Madeline Barr's star had long since waned, she was still known in certain circles. The disturbing alien said something that snapped him for his thoughts. "Now, we also have a special information for a certain individual amongst us." The Xenos gave away no information about Gabriel himself, seeming to want to respect his privacy to the most extreme degree, which made Gabriel supremely grateful and far more guilty for the visceral reaction he had had to them. "We understand that many of the warnings about toxicity and temperatures might not seem important to an individual from such a..." The aliens struggled for a moment, trying their best to find a flattering word. "Such a potent world as the one they hail from," they explained. "And while this will be true in most circumstances, we do not know how the wildlife will react to your constitution, so while you will be given more freedom in your movements than most, as to avoid condescending you, it is imperative that you follow all safety advice," they added. Gabriel felt that was a very wordy way of saying, "Don't get too big for your britches." He supposed it was fair, though. Many Death Waters had gotten themselves hurt or even killed by assuming that a paradise world would just roll over for them. One of the courses he had taken before leaving Sol had been very clear about this as well. The one that stuck out for Gabriel the most had been the case of Thomas Rink. He had jumped off a cliff on a Class 6H, assuming that lower gravity meant he could not die from a fall. They had been pulling him off the rocks for hours.